Our officers' hands are tied that they couldn't arrest.
Well, police are warning that a new Idaho Supreme Court ruling is going to endanger domestic violence victims across the state.
Temperatures in the 80s and 90s all across the inland Northwest. Did we break a record in Spokane? I'll let you know.
Plus, should employers test applicants for marijuana? A new Nevada law has a lot of you talking. Now's your chance to let us know what you think. Hit the Vote Now tab on your KREM 2 app. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jane McCarthy. Mark is on assignment. We are seeing a bit of everything tonight, from extremely dry, windy conditions to thunderstorms, too, in some places. We want to head straight to meteorologist Michelle Boss in the Weather Center tracking all of that. Michelle?
And fortunately, the thunderstorm activity is pretty sparse because the last thing we need is lightning with these very hot and dry conditions across the area. It is dry, for one. As we take a look at relative humidity across eastern Washington and North Idaho, 17% relative humidity in Omak and the teens in Moses Lake. It does get a little bit better as you get eastward into Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, but still dry conditions throughout. And it's also windy. Moses Lake at the top of the hour seeing wind gusts of 30 miles per hour. Still a little bit breezy in Deer Park and Sandpoint, winds in the 15 to 25 mile per hour range for wind gust. It is certainly hot. That's something I don't need to tell you. It looks like Spokane is coming in at the top of the hour at 90 degrees, which would be our first 90-degree day. The record is 91, and we could still go up another degree between now and the next couple of hours. So we'll have to wait and see if we tied the record. Elsewhere across the region, upper 80s in Deer Park and Coeur d'Alene, 98 degrees in Moses Lake. Oh my goodness. Lower 90s in Omak and into the upper 80s right now in Lewiston. And again, some folks could still see another degree or two rise before the day is over. Red flag warning continues through this evening because of the gusty winds and low relative humidity. So pretty critical fire conditions in that area. As far as any showers and thunderstorms, satellite and radar showing some isolated storms up across the mountains of far northeastern Washington, right along that Canadian border. And some storms are starting to fizzle out across the Washington Blues in southeastern Washington. Those continue to push into the east towards Grangeville. The next 12 hours shows dry conditions, temperatures still very hot through the evening hours in the 80s and upper 70s. We will get some relief from the heat tomorrow, still above normal though, highs in the low 80s, and then back into the 80s with sunshine for the rest of the weekend.
Michelle, thank you. Well, today, Washington Senator Maria Cantwell stepped up pressure on the U.S. Forest Service to implement the latest technology to fight wildfires. Earlier this year, President Donald Trump signed Senator Cantwell's Wildfire Manager bill into law. It requires the Forest Service to give GPS locations for crews on wildfires, and it gives firefighters drones to map fires in real time. At a Senate hearing today, Cantwell urged the Forest Service to start using the technology immediately, pointing to recent wildfire forecasts for an above normal fire season throughout Washington.
Because we've already had the Grant County fire, I think this map from our state is alarming. It's alarming because so much of it is in western Washington. You know, we're used to the challenges in central and eastern Washington, but when you're talking about the usually wet side of our state, to see fire season predictions for the latest mapping to include so much of western Washington, it's concerning. So we want every resource that we can. We want this to be the same as, you know, any disaster that you'd be preparing for, whether it's a hurricane in the south or a storm off of our east coast.
Senator Cantwell says the Bureau of Land Management started using the new technology immediately. She's now urging the Forest Service to do the same.
I've been doing this work for quite some time, and it just felt like it was taking us back in time when we received the information.
The Idaho Supreme Court ruled this week law enforcement cannot arrest someone for a misdemeanor unless they have a warrant or if the officer actually sees the crime. Now, that ruling has law enforcement and advocacy organizations concerned now about what this means specifically for domestic violence victims. Officers responding to domestic violence calls often arrest the suspect on misdemeanor charges, really as a way of separating the people involved.
We actually just had a misdemeanor domestic right before we came here. We could not arrest him. We did not have enough to even charge for a felony. So we just put her into our shelter due to the fact that what else are we going to do, because our officers' hands are tied that they couldn't arrest.
Police and advocates say they do not want this to discourage people from seeking help. People will still be cited for misdemeanors. They just can't be arrested unless officers, again, have a warrant or saw a crime take place. The ruling stems from a drug conviction case. Well, Sandpoint just started its big summer tourism season, but with a big eyesore right in the middle of downtown now. 4 months ago, a massive fire gutted a handful of businesses in downtown Sandpoint. Investigators call it an accident. Well, now, as KREM 2's Taylor Vito shows us, summer tourists will see a noticeable difference.
From above, the view is picturesque. All is well in downtown Sandpoint, but a noticeable piece is missing.
It was chaotic the day it happened, and
Remnants from that day in February when a fire gutted these old buildings, destroying 5 businesses and causing millions in damages.
it was heartbreaking. It was depressing seeing the building on fire.
Brad Clark owns a new restaurant called the Burger Dock. It's across the street. He just opened and will be here to cater to out-of-town summer visitors, but he's still heard plenty of rumblings as to how long this land will stay empty.
Everyone's wondering what's going to happen with it.
Well, we just moved on with our life until something happens there.
That's the voice of Charlie Powell. He's the owner of the Sandpoint Chocolate Bear Candy Shop. It was lost in the fire. But as for next steps, he says he's heard crickets from the city and the building's owner.
No, I have no clue what's happening. Nobody's reached out to us since we've left Sandpoint after the fire.
What Powell did get after the fire? An uber-high utility bill, presumably from a pipe broken in the fire.
Yeah, we got this nice water bill, and it was like 3 times our original water bill.
Now, I reached out to the city's administrator to ask what the next steps in this process are and if or when anything will be rebuilt. So far, I'm waiting to hear back. Clark says he's heard that one of the businesses here will rebuild. He doesn't know of a timeline, though. For at least this summer, it appears he'll have to get used to this view across the street.
It was a shame seeing those burned up businesses there.
In Sandpoint, Taylor Vito, KREM 2 News.
This has been the honor of a lifetime, the opportunity of a lifetime.
Sarah Sanders is leaving her position as White House press secretary at the end of the month. President Donald Trump called her a great friend and person, adding he hopes she will run for governor of her home state of Arkansas. Meanwhile, a federal watchdog group is calling for White House counselor Kellyanne Conway to be fired. The U.S. Office of Special Counsel says Conway is a repeat offender of the Hatch Act that limits certain political activities for federal employees. Conway is accused of making disparaging remarks against Democratic presidential candidates. She says she has, quote, no reaction, unquote, to the accusations. The Democratic National Committee announced the 20 candidates who qualified for the party's first presidential primary debates later this month. Washington Governor Jay Inslee made the cut. Montana Governor Steve Bullock is the most high-profile candidate left off the list. He did not reach the party's polling or fundraising thresholds. Well, it is a signature stop in downtown Spokane, but a KREM 2 viewer actually noticed from our sky cam that there may be some rust forming on the top of the rooftop dome of the Louvre Carousel. So our Amanda Rowley looked into that.
If you're out walking around Riverfront Park, you won't see the rust that's forming on the dome of the Louvre Carousel, but you can see it from above.
The rust may have been the result of the wrong sealant applied to the dome. That's according to Fiona Dixon with Spokane City Parks and Recreation. The good news is she says the rust has not caused any major damage to the carousel or the building. Since the structure is under warranty with contractors, Dixon says it will get fixed with no additional cost to the city or taxpayers. There isn't currently a timeline on when the dome will be repaired, but Dixon says soon crews will sandblast the rust off and apply a new sealant. And don't worry, they do not expect to close the carousel while crews clean off the dome.
This isn't the first time a problem like this has happened here at Riverfront Park. In fact, the Rotary Fountain had to close for a few weeks in 2016 because of maintenance problems. City officials say it could have been because of mechanical issues or rust in the metal, but good news is it's up and running and folks can cool off today.
Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
In other news, Nevada is the first state to ban pre-employment marijuana testing. So what do you think? Right now, you can hit the Vote Now tab on your KREM 2 app or go to krem.com/vote. The question, should employers test applicants for marijuana? We posted this story on our Facebook page, and it has a lot of you talking and asking questions too. So we want to break it down for you. The new law makes it illegal for an employer to refuse to hire an applicant who tests positive for marijuana. Now, there are a few exceptions. The law would not apply to first responders or people who have to drive a lot for work or have jobs with the federal government. It does apply to drug tests that are part of the application process. New York City has a similar law. Employers there are not allowed to test applicants for marijuana. So we asked what you think. Should employers test applicants for marijuana? And it looks like 67% of you right now are weighing in saying no. Thanks for voting.